Well, it is crunch time. South Africans have a week to decide who they will vote into power at local government level. And they have lots of candidates to choose from as politicians rush to convince voters. But will they actually deliver this time? And are voters in poverty-stricken areas buying it? Let's explore this with eNCA election analyst Lukhona Mnguni. Lukhona, thanks for speaking to us. You know, we just heard from residents in Lichtenburg who say that they're fed up and they're going to vote the ANC out of power. Do you think we're going to actually see that happen, though, in municipalities and metros across the country?
Well, Shahan, I mean, we can't be political sangomas now, can we? But one thing that strikes me quite differently this time around, if I look back to 2016 local government elections, is that there is a sense of communities wanting to take back their power and find a way to run their municipalities. There is a lot of dissatisfaction with politics and politicians, and you hear a lot of, people trying to say, Action SA will ask, are you heartful with politics? Other political parties and candidates sort of saying, it's now time to put trust in your leaders. And you've got these, civic associations and movements of umbrella bodies of independent candidates. Of course, something that we have not seen previously, Shahan, because what used to happen is that independent candidates would only contest a ward and not be able to contest on the PR ballot. Now, these Electoral Act amendments that have made it possible to formulate, umbrella bodies for independent candidates means that in some municipalities, like Mfuleni, for example, in Madibeng and others, independent candidates are also contesting the PR ballot. Now, that will be quite interesting in these elections to see how much influence it will have, because, Shahan, we know that political parties have before contested wards and not won a single one, but still gain a sizable share of the PR seats. I have in mind the economic freedom fighters here, who command 30 seats in the Johannesburg Council, but have no wards that they have won. So quite interesting that we might end up with some independents under these umbrella bodies making it into councils, even if they don't win ward seats. And I think that's the novelty around these particular elections.
Yeah, and of course the trust is the issue, right? Because we keep hearing promises from politicians, especially for local government, because it boils down to service delivery. President Cyril Ramaphosa was out campaigning in Gauteng today. He says that he knows that there are dire issues of service delivery in the province and that they will work, quote, tirelessly to actually fix the issues. But we've heard that before. Let's talk about the trust between South African citizens and politicians.
Yeah, that one, there have been numerous studies conducted over the years by different research houses showcasing the declining trust levels between citizens and politicians. Also, just the popularity levels of politicians no longer ticking as high as they probably used to in about 15 years ago and so on. And that's simply because, Shahan, politicians are in the habit of saying things that they do not mean or that they don't live up to. You talk about President Ramaphosa equally today in one of the communities here in the city of Johannesburg. He said that the ANC is the only political party that can resolve the issue of electricity. But that is a lie, because his government is actually, at the national level in charge of this. He himself promised us in January 2020 a reconfigured board at Eskom simply because he understood that the resignation of then chairperson Jabu Mabuza, the late, may his soul rest in peace, meant that he needed to reconfigure that board and give us a new dispensation. But that has not happened. He hasn't lived up to that promise. It's exactly those things that take away trust on politicians. So people are more keen to look out for candidates that they believe when they say things. But also, Shahan, we must also say that we have seen a lot of popularity of national leaders, as we always do, but I'm sure people are more, searching around their local communities. Who's my candidate? Who is the person that is in the list? Who will be entrusted? And it's those local politicians that will determine this election. It's those local actors that will determine how people vote, because when the national leaders are gone, the local ones, the local politicians, the local actors will have to remain behind and deliver on the promise of these elections.
Obviously, you've looked at many of the parties' election manifestos, right? Are there any that in particular will actually bring about change in areas like Alex, Diepsloot, etc.?
Well, Shahan, I mean, you talk about areas where there's an intersection of problems. Some of those problems do not reside with the local government sphere. You do have issues, for example, of availability or lack thereof of land for purposes of housing projects, for example. But you do have issues that are within the domain of local government, insofar as, you know, sewerage that's running through the streets in some of these areas. I mean, just take a drive around Alex. It's really terrible to see the living conditions of some people. But the political manifestos, Shahan, tend to be quite global in their outlook, even for those that are quite specific. I think the EFF stands out as one political party that's trying to, tailor-make certain offerings to each district municipality across the country. And of course, they end up with almost a Bible-like of a manifesto. But they are actually starting to say local government elections is about being cognizant of the issues that you find in different communities, and that no one community is the same as the next one. But you won't get something that pinpoints you to Diepsloot, to Alex. And this is where, for me, manifestos are not only the only tool for us to determine how to vote as citizens. They're about one offering, and therefore we want to see where political parties place emphasis. Action SA, Patriotic Alliance, really playing into the sphere of, wanting to win these elections, partly through messaging on foreign nationals and how they will deal with that, feeling that the local economy, for example, if you look at Diepsloot and you look at studies done by the Sustainable Livelihoods Foundations in how the township economy there has transformed and changed hands, and over time it is really much in the hands of foreign nationals. So you get parties that are putting emphasis on that particular score because they know that this resonates with people's lived experience. They have seen what is happening on the ground in their communities, who now holds power in terms of owning the local spaza shops, the local hair salons, and so on. So you do get that parties are trying to tailor-make message to communities and their lived experiences, but there's no one manifesto that you'll really say, this manifesto will resolve issues in my village, Epalasi, in Flagstaff, or Alex and Diepsloot. But you do want to see where political parties placing their greatest emphasis.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that's the case. Thanks for your insight. Appreciate it. eNCA election analyst, Lukhona Mnguni.